Hi everybody, Danielle Harris here from the Halloween franchise, and you are watching Big Chill Theater Presents.
"1989, a distant time and place when Nintendo, Madonna, and Jason Voorhees ruled the world. But all of that was about to come to an end as the Sunset Strip gave way to Seattle. Cocaine was replaced by cappuccino, and the once bustling supermalls became quaint, boring mom and pop shops. Lo, the incoming shitscape of 1990s horror would all but destroy our beloved genre once and for all, and it is into this transitional period which we dive today to examine one of the most maligned and misunderstood entries of the big three franchises, Halloween 5, The Revenge of Michael Myers.
What is necessary to those who do not know what horror means. Horror has a face, and you must make a friend of horror. Horror and moral terror are your friends. If they are not, then they are enemies to be feared. They are truly enemies.
Basking in the smashing success that was Halloween 4, The Return of Michael Myers, and perhaps sensing the soon imminent demise of the slasher genre, Mustafa Akkad immediately set about the business of laying out a fifth installment of the series, looking to carve out his piece of the pie alongside the Friday the 13th and Nightmare on Elm Street franchises. Fair enough, given that it was, in fact, the original 1978 classic that gave birth to the subgenre in the first place. He was able to enlist the services of French director Dominique Othenin-Girard alongside the returning Donald Pleasance, Danielle Harris, and Ellie Cornell. Slasher films aren't typically known for their ability to retain the star actors from one film to the next, and so the idea that there would be some continuity present seemed to be a good sign of what was to come. But 1 year later, on October 13th, 1989, Halloween 5 was released to the masses, and well, unfortunately the result was less favorable this time. Audiences and critics alike almost universally panned the film, characterizing it as a rushed attempt at a cash grab that bore almost none of the charm possessed by its 1988 predecessor. In the 30 years since, the film has been subject to an almost endless volley of abuses, lambasted on nearly every horror website, blog, podcast, and YouTube video imaginable, and often categorized alongside Halloween Resurrection as being the worst film in the entire series. If you're watching this, I'm going to assume that you're at least reasonably indoctrinated in the lore of the Halloween films, so I'm not going to spend a bunch of time telling you about the basic elements and storylines of the series. Folks, let's get something out of the way right off the bat. I'm not here to tell you that Halloween 5 is a perfect film. The entire first act is clunky, with a meandering setup that involves a lot of ridiculous dialogue and less than inspired direction. I'm not here to tell you that this is Donald Pleasance doing his best work. I'm not going to defend that scene in the beginning where Michael floats down a stream and is magically resurrected in some random hermit's hut a year later. And I'm not going to tell you that Tina Williams is the greatest protagonist in the series. I am certainly not going to defend that circus clown music that rears its ugly head whenever the film's two primary law enforcement officials make an appearance. No, that's not what I'm here to do today. What I am going to tell you is this. If you can make it through the film's less than stellar opening 40 minutes, you will be the lucky recipient of some of the most effective and atmospheric Halloween imagery in the entire franchise, several of the darkest and most chilling kill scenes in the entire franchise, one of the most frightening depictions of Michael Myers in the entire franchise, and arguably the best final act of the entire series outside the 1978 original. Before I completely skip over the less than stellar first half of the film, let me at least give a brief summary. Following the events of Halloween 4, Jamie Lloyd is in a children's clinic, and the knife attack that she did on her stepmother is mostly glossed over. A psychic link between Michael and Jamie is established, and she has these sort of epileptic seizures whenever Michael is up to something. Early in the film, one of the film's main protagonists from Part 4, Rachel, is unceremoniously dispatched with a pair of scissors to the clavicle. A lot of people hate this move. Rachel was a very popular character, and not only did they want to see more of her in this film, but for the most part, they weren't exactly thrilled by her heir apparent one, Tina Williams. I'm going to go ahead and disagree with this stance right off the bat. The writers and director of this film are sending a clear message with this kill at this point in the film. Nobody is safe. It doesn't matter if you are a main character, you can be offed at any time. Early in the film, not safe. Broad daylight, not safe. I think it actually sends a really effective message and establishes Michael as a credible threat early in the film. So with that in mind, I'm also going to rate this kill a 6 out of 10. Nothing spectacular, but it is rather violent and jarring. Also sprinkled into the first half is a lot of clunky, unwanted daytime dialogue scenes between the remaining teenage characters and a few scenes between Dr. Loomis and Jamie. Loomis's mental health seems to have deteriorated significantly in the year since Part 4, but that doesn't stop him from somehow having knowledge of Jamie Lloyd's whereabouts at all times, or bossing cops and doctors around with total carte blanche. Unfortunately, I will have to concede that this is not Loomis's strongest of films. The character at this point has become somewhat of an exaggerated parody of himself. And before moving on, I'd like to address another common complaint that you will hear about this film. The Myers house. How did a modest 2-story suburban home morph into a Victorian mansion? I don't know. But to be honest, for the purposes of this film, I don't really care that much. The house is creepy. It's, the air is dusty. Random rays of light are seeping in through these boarded up windows. The outside is overrun by vegetation. The inside looks about as fucking haunted as anything you could ever want to see. Peeling wallpapers and tattered curtains. They never paid much attention to continuity when it comes to how the masks look. So why would they care about this? I mean, the bottom line is this. Does the house provide a creepy atmosphere that helps tell the story? And in my opinion, that's a resounding yes. With that out of the way, let's cut to the meat of this film, the second half. At almost exactly the 40-minute mark, this film takes a distinct turn in the form of a rather large garden plot at the face for this asshole greaser who also happens to be named Michael. Michael is the boyfriend of Tina Williams, one of the film's main heroines. It's also another broad daylight kill, and it feels reminiscent of a sleepaway camp type kill. We've completely entered 80s slasher territory for perhaps the first time in the series. Another solid kill, nothing crazy. I'm going to give this one also a 6 out of 10. As we move to dusk, Jamie Lloyd, played by Danielle Harris, is in the middle of the Halloween costume contest at the children's psychiatric clinic in which she currently resides. She slips into a sort of psychic panic attack brought on apparently by the presence of Michael Myers, who has now abducted Tina Williams when she unwittingly gets into her boyfriend's car. With Myers now donning the Halloween mask that her late boyfriend had purchased for the evening's affairs. Unaware that she is in the car with a homicidal maniac, she really seems only mildly annoyed by her chauffeur's violent and abusive behavior, since it's only incrementally more offensive than her original boyfriend's. With the now completely insane Dr. Loomis somehow on hand to translate Jamie's sputtering gestures and histrionics, the police are able to pinpoint Tina and Michael's location to a gas station that adorns the visage of a rather busty woman with a pair of giant cookies for a brassiere. The police surround the filling station and are able to secure Tina's safety, but Michael has already sped off into the night. Back at the children's clinic, Jamie is unable to convince Tina of the danger that exists, and Tina catches a ride to a party at a locally famous venue known as the Tower Farm from everyone's two favorite bumbling cops, so she can drink and dance the night away without any lingering concerns about her asshole boyfriend. And I think now would also be a good time to point out that this film has an excellent Halloween feel to it. The look of the scenes at the Tower Farm, the Halloween party at the children's clinic, and everything else from the second act have a certain something that I can't quite put my finger on, but it's very nostalgic to me. And I think that for the most part, this is a really great looking film. It's during this party that Tina's friend and blonde bombshell, Sammy, sneaks off with her prankster boyfriend, Spitz, to have a little extracurricular fun in a suitably creepy and abandoned barn. These scenes are dripping with atmospheric fog and shadows, and after a couple of cheap jump scares, we're treated to what can rightfully be described as an exceptional double kill scene. As Spitz and Sammy get into the spirit of things, Michael, the real one this time, rudely interrupts with a rather savage pitchfork impalement of Sammy's annoying late-night lover. Sammy screams and makes an attempt to avenge her fallen beau, but as she attacks, Michael easily spins her and slashes her with a farming scythe, the likes of which I've only seen in the hands of an actual Grim Reaper. I love the way that Michael slowly walks off with disdain after disposing of Spitz, and then calmly heads to the corner to retrieve that massive scythe, and then just stands there motionless in the shadows while staring at Sammy as she screams uncontrollably. Top notch, an 8 out of 10 for this one. During this time, Jamie and her stuttering pirate sidekick Billy have escaped the children's clinic, and after an off-screen kill of the too much maligned cops, the party at the Tower Farm starts to disband, and Tina finally discovers that something is amiss. Myers fires up the stolen muscle car and tears after Tina, trying to run her down as she hops a fence into the field to try to escape. Jamie and Billy arrive on the scene, and Jamie screams at Michael to stop as he is inches from finishing Tina off. Which brings me to another couple points. This version of Michael is really awesome. He seems to have a sort of playful side to him. He enjoys killing people, but he also enjoys mocking people. Notice how he scrapes Greaser Michael's prized car with that garden fork moments before offing him. Then he also plays games with Tina by pretending to be her boyfriend and wearing a different mask. In a sort of callback to Halloween 1, the scenes between Bob and Linda. And he alternately chases down Tina or Jamie and Billy in this muscle car. I don't know if it's a Nova or a Mustang, whatever. Could someone let me know in the comments section? I'm not much of a car person. But the point is, he could have easily caught any of these people in about 2 seconds. But instead, he chooses to play with them like a game of cat and mouse. This is something that really hadn't been explored that much since the first film. I also like the fact that Michael is willing to use weapons that are not conventional in other slasher films like Cars. He also shamelessly targets children and dogs, and he really is an evil dude. Another point of contention is the mask, which people seem to hate. I can understand the frustration from the point of view that the mask bears almost no resemblance to the mask in Part 4, and by all indications, it's supposed to actually be the same mask. People have described this mask as crabby looking or old man-esque. I've even heard it described as a Nicolas Cage mask. It was actually modeled after Greg Nicotero of Creepshow Infamy's likeness, but that aside, those descriptors are all fairly accurate. And what else is accurate is to say that it's a pretty scary mask, actually. And the first example in the series I can see of them going for a more aggressive, dirty, grimy looking Michael. And you would come to see that same attitude emulated in several other installments of the series going forward. Moving on, the car chase ends when Michael crashes into a tree, halting his attack for the moment. The horn rings out into the night as Tina and Jamie try to gather their wits, but after what seems like an eternity, the horn goes silent. This is another brilliant spot. Whoever was responsible for that touch, be it the writer or Dominique, job well done. That scare is remarkably effective in my opinion. Michael emerges from the flaming wreck and closes for the kill on the injured Jamie, but Tina hurls herself onto Michael and takes the knife, giving Jamie and Billy a chance to escape. This brings me to another point. Yes, some of Tina's dialogue is annoying, but she is absolutely an underrated character in this series. She goes out on her shield, saves Jamie and Billy, and yes, I think she's hot. I don't care, send me a hate mail or whatever, but I think Tina's the shit. Meanwhile, Loomis arrives on the scene and saves Jamie, but quickly reveals his plan to destroy Michael once and for all. He actually wants to use Jamie as bait and place her in Judith Myers' bedroom at the Myers house, and then lure Michael there to be ambushed by the entire Haddonfield police force. This somewhat morbid trap is laid, and Jamie awaits Michael, brushing her hair while practicing signals with a cop who's been assigned to be her personal protector in the room, named Charlie. Michael launches an apparent off-screen attack on the children's clinic, prompting all the cops to speed off and help over there and leaving Jamie vulnerable, with only Loomis, one cop outside, and Charlie with her in the room. It isn't long before Michael shows up and rear-ends the lone remaining outside cop. He then punches through the driver's side window and smashes his face into the steering column, while Loomis, Charlie, and Jamie listen to his demise inside via walkie-talkie. A really frightening death scene. Solid 7 out of 10 for me. The reactions of Jamie as she hears this savagery over the radio is really effective and sells the scene. At this point, Charlie and Loomis have a fairly strong disagreement about how to proceed, and it is brought to a swift and decisive end when Loomis smashes Charlie's radio and then pulls a gun on him. It is 100% crystal clear at this point that Loomis has completely lost his mind and may not be any less dangerous than Michael himself. Loomis proceeds outside, and we get a scene where Loomis tries to reason with Michael in a spot that is usually dismissed as silly or out of character. I always actually kind of liked this scene. It's one of the only depictions in the series of Loomis trying to reason with Michael. I know we get a little bit of that in part 4 at the gas station, but this is the first time where they're depicted in the same shot. It's also interesting that Michael, for the first time in the series, displays some sort of reluctance to attack someone immediately on sight. Whether by plan or not, Michael eventually flips the script and slashes Loomis, then ragdolls him through the porch railing, presumably leaving him for dead. At this point, the tension really picks up, and I don't think this film gets nearly enough credit for the setups that follow. Fully aware of the carnage that is taking place outside, Charlie and Jamie know that they are on the clock, and Michael is now making his way through the house and upstairs towards them. Charlie quickly smashes out a third-story window and tosses a rope out for him and Jamie to climb down on. Michael arrives and begins to violently smash through the door, a jarring visual. Charlie unloads his entire clip on Michael, seemingly missing some shots and hitting others, but Michael eventually falls, and Charlie quickly resumes the business of getting Jamie out the window. Seconds later, an even angrier Michael blasts through the door and savagely attacks, at least giving Jamie some small opportunity to escape. It's hard to tell if he's stabbing or just hitting him, but he quickly wrangles Charlie's neck through a rope that he had lassoed out the window and hangs him with a sickening crack. A quick shot of Michael looking out the window to check his handiwork as Charlie briefly struggles with his last breaths brings this scene to a close. This one is a beauty. My favorite kill of the film, one of my favorites of the entire series. The lead up to it is extremely suspenseful. The kill itself is inventive and impactful. And Charlie himself really is an underrated character. And given his brief screen time, he's a really good and memorable character. 9 out of 10 on this one for me. After some quick shots of Meeker surveying the damage at the children's clinic, we're back at the Myers house where Michael has resumed his pursuit of Jamie, who hides in a laundry chute. Michael eventually discovers her, and we're treated to an absolutely badass shot of Michael reaching down the chute, trying to grab her as she lets go and drops to the bottom of the shaft. How do people not love this scene? Also worth mentioning, When have you ever seen this type of relentless, single-minded pursuit of a young child by a psychopath in one of these slasher films? And really, this kid is twice as resourceful and tough as Laurie Strode. Michael heads to the basement now to try and finish the job. He slams and stabs the locked door of the laundry chute, growing more and more enraged as Jamie attempts to climb back up. He finally pops the door off and tries to grab Jamie before switching to wildly flailing his knife blindly into the shaft. He eventually resorts to stabbing straight through the metal walls of the laundry chute, even grazing Jamie's legs with one of the slashes, injuring her leg. She eventually manages, through Herculean effort, to wriggle back to the top of the laundry chute and escape the way she entered. If there is a more epic chase scene in any of the Halloween films, I'd love to hear it. Jamie tries a number of escapes, but locked doors force her to the extremely creepy candlelit attic, where she discovers the bodies of Max the dog, Mike the greaser, and Rachel. She sees the shadow of Michael approaching, and with nowhere left to run, she seems to accept her fate and lays down in the children's coffin that Loomis referenced earlier as being stolen from the cemetery. An emotional unmasking scene that follows between Jamie and Michael doesn't necessarily make a lot of sense, but it is really effectively acted and shot. It provides hints to a human side of Michael that's mostly left in the shadows and not fleshed out. A tear streams down Michael's face, but when Jamie goes to touch his face, he recoils violently and falls down, tearing the mask back down over his face and entering into a fit of rage. He slams stuff around, even throwing the coffin as Jamie Houdini Lloyd miraculously escapes yet another impossible situation. Down the stairs she goes and into the arms of Dr. Loomis, who is somehow still alive. A great callback shot to the stair scene from Halloween 1 leads to Loomis holding a hysterical, screaming Jamie Lloyd in front of him as bait while Michael approaches. These apparent hints at sadism and insanity kind of foreshadow some of the angles used in Halloween 2018 with Dr. Sartain. Loomis backs through a corridor and into the foyer where he traps Michael with a chain net that drops from the ceiling. He proceeds to shoot Michael with a bunch of tranquilizer darts, and when that fails to stop him, he rips a 2x4 off the window and beats the encumbered Michael mercilessly until he finally collapses, with the exhausted Loomis falling on top of him. The much maligned Halloween 5 mask looks really awesome in this shot. And speaking of the mask, when we pick up the next scene at the police station where Michael is being held, he's still wearing it in the cell. People have pointed out the ridiculousness of this scene, and while I admit there is something visually comical about it, like something out of a 1960s Batman TV series, I honestly just assumed that the cops were taking such precaution with him that they were actually afraid to even touch him, and that's why he was still wearing the mask. I always thought it was kind of a cool touch. Meeker assures Jamie that Michael's killing days are over, and she's being taken outside to be escorted by a cop back to the clinic when heavy machine gun fire breaks out. The man in black, who has made a couple of ambiguous appearances throughout the film, is shooting up the police station, and the cop who is supposed to be escorting Jamie quickly abandons her to race inside and join the fray. Jamie doesn't wait long to follow, and when she does, the scene inside is grisly indeed. I believe I counted 8 dead cops as she walks through the hallway to find Michael's empty cell, blasted wide open with remnants of fire burning the bars as Jamie cries and it cuts to black. The atmosphere in this scene with the sparse ambient score and the smoke are just fantastic. Since these are all off-screen kills, I won't rate them, but suffice to say, this is a really effective scene. And that's how the film ends. Let me first of all admit something in full disclosure. I saw Halloween 5 opening night when I was 12 years old. My older brother and his girlfriend at the time took me to a midnight showing in a semi-empty theater. It is without a doubt one of my fondest horror movie memories of all time. The nostalgia I have for this film runs deep, and I realize that. There was a small part of me that was worried that when I watched it this time, I would realize that the critics had been right all along, that this was an awful, trash movie with almost no redeeming qualities. And in fact, quite the opposite happened. I think I gained even more appreciation for what this movie really is. balls out slasher film that takes us out of the 80s kicking and screaming. When you factor in the cops at the end, this film has one of the higher body counts in the series. A couple of the kills are absolute classics. This version of Michael Myers is, in my estimation, one of the scariest. This is our first time seeing a version of Michael that is this aggressive and physically imposing, and I think they pulled it off really well. Donald Shanks does a great job. There are a lot of scenes with a great creepy atmosphere. The cinematography in this film is super underrated, and there are several moments of genuine suspense, which is something that not all the films in this franchise can rightfully claim. There is another somewhat justifiable complaint out there that the writers of this film didn't really know what they were doing when it came to the man in black and the thorn symbol. You know, it is even said that they didn't have a complete script when they began filming this movie. I believe all of that. While the film makes its share of mistakes, the one mistake that it doesn't make is the most fatal one that slasher films of this type usually make: remaining stagnant, refusing to take any risks. Apparently, the open-ended nature of this entry was even compelling enough to prompt a young Quentin Tarantino to take it upon himself to outline his own idea for a sequel to this. Not bad. This was a hard film to follow up, and we didn't see a sequel until 1996, another significantly troubled, albeit lovable entry with mixed reviews. That in large part contributed to this narrative that Halloween 5 had nearly killed the series. And when Halloween 6 took the storyline as far as it could go, we got H2O, a reboot slash alternate timeline of sorts, which at the time was all but unheard of. They do that kind of stuff all the time now, but back then it was viewed as a sort of concession that this Thorn trilogy had taken the franchise in such a poor direction that the producers were left with no choice but to completely ignore their existence if they wished to continue. The reality is that the original story had simply run its course and reached a natural end. There was nowhere left to go that made any sense. As a one-off entry, not only is it not a terrible horror film, it's actually a really good one. So there you have it, folks. Halloween 5, The Revenge of Michael Myers, a misunderstood classic. I may not have actually changed any minds, but hopefully I was able to at least entertain you while getting you to see it from another perspective. And maybe next time you watch it, you'll find some new appreciation for it. Until next time.